In case anyone new is watching online, my name is Jason Gold. I'm an associate professor at Sagami Women's University in Tokyo, Japan. Today, will be talking about overcoming barriers to creativity. So this will have chances to kind of share our own experiences with each other. Very quick again, I'm from America, Philadelphia is where I was born. But the last 12 years, I've been teaching at universities in Japan. And research interests, English language learning, education and positive psychology, and COL. So the overview of today is I'm going to go through 4 different obstacles to creativity in general, and then some strategies to help us overcome them. Then we'll have chances for small group discussions. I think the point of coming to a live conference for many of us is to talk to each other. We all come from very diverse backgrounds and we have very unique experiences. So just like in my classes, what we learn, we'll have a chance to connect to our own life and share our own opinions. So to start off, I have just some questions about creativity in general. So we'll get into groups, I guess 2 or 3 with whoever's close by to you. And in your groups, just how would you define creativity? So what is creativity? What comes to mind? From 0 to 10. So 0 is low, 10 is high. How creative do you feel you were when you were a child? And 0 to 10, how creative do you feel you are now, these days, and why? So this will connect to the presentation later. So this workshop is 90 minutes, like the classes that I teach. And what I tell my students is when we sit down too long, all the blood in our body goes down to our legs, but our brain needs blood and oxygen to kind of focus to stay awake. So the discussion parts, I'd like us to do standing up, if that's okay with you. If you want to sit, you can sit. But I'd like us to have a chance to kind of stand up and stretch every 15 minutes and just have short chats with each other. Also, I forgot to say, the end of the presentation, I'll have a QR code again for all these slides. So you don't have to worry about pictures or taking notes. There's a lot of slides in this. So I'd like us to get into different pairings later, but for now, maybe whoever's close to you, 3 or 2, I'll ask if you could just stand up, short stretch, say hello, good afternoon, introduce your name if you don't know each other. And one last thing, so there's a lot of these little chats, and I know once we start, it's difficult to stop. I hate having to stop good discussions. So if you hear this alarm, can't hear it. So that'll mean 1 more minute. So if you could try to wrap up that conversation after that, then we'll sit down and then continue with the next block. All right, everyone, so about 8 minutes for this one. So just say hello and have a chat about these questions.
Hey. Sorry, I was fixing some things. I guess would be something like the capacity of seeing
maybe 1,000
came up with something
it doesn't matter.
That's for me, so that to be creative is to vary your
It's a fairly creative mode for us. The concept of move around the world, it's a qualitative experience. There are some which is something that you have to know our discussion. But we really do feel you, like you feel it when you're being creative. It's managing And I think that makes
You're gonna change
it
it.
very different way.
Unique,
And then you have to do ideation.
When you have study of creating, like,
I mean, it's creativity, right? It's
like,
you're making something new along that way. New to you. So there's like little C creativity that's new to you, and there's big C creativity, capital C, which is new to anyone.
There are a lot of different ways
to say I mean, they're from the individual's perspective, it's the same thing.
yes.
And then as you think that integrated into a larger society,
young
culture, they're not the same thing.
creating and
I think
understanding
some of my
the
original
environment.
materials
So very, very
materials,
because everything is new.
Yes.
Word, you get older.
And you see it on this.
To lead a life.
You were a child. When you were a child, what do you think?
Who was that?
I have only teacher and I'm going to be teacher. I've been working for many years. So then I'm supposed to be creative anyway. My ski, I'm really yeah, but special needs is not the same as
Did you feel more creative?
we don't use the same.
I consider myself creative. Maybe when I was a child, 0, maybe a 1, and nowadays maybe 1.
Really?
Well,
But you're a teacher, right?
Yes. I like,
Profession.
I know, I like another fashion.
Sweden in Estonia has gone for it.
I know.
Always identified as creative.
Sweden and Estonia.
Probably more now than
But you know, for me, special needs, special needs.
The world has.
when the kids have to create. Now I do. It's not required.
It's when I teach, so when I teach, I'm going to teach maybe 7. I try to give them all maybe a positive. I and that's my way of being to show them different.
Can't change your score.
Yeah, and now I feel I feel like I'm less creative. I think I'm before.
For example,
So we kind of have to
I think when I was a kid, I was making art. That's new to me. Like guess, new to everyone in a way, but it's sort of like creating artifacts. And now, work is creating new ideas. It's a lot easier to just make a new problem and it's just come up with so that's why I think like my work
In the courses you have.
more satisfying. Maybe.
City of Children, how creative
The formal goal is
Maybe it's
not
good job.
very creative. My son is very, he doesn't have a choice.
Well, it's just a real world.
It's what I'm expecting. It's small kids are all creative by default. Everything's new to them, right? Like for a child, but then looking at it, they're in a constant state of being Did you grow up in? Because I grew up in the US. In the US, I think people, other kids are creative. Is that the same in Uruguay? Is there a culture of encouraging creativity?
I think it's one of the only question teachers.
Okay, everyone.
Everyone's like,
Please say thank you to your groups, and you can take your seats. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt. We'll have more chances to talk again.
I think the noise is
I did it like this last week, but I was still doing something on my meeting, so that's better than Okay, everyone, thank you very much. So just very quick, question 2. Raise of hands. If when you were a child, you gave a score 5 or higher, can you raise your hand? When you were a child, 5 or higher, can you raise your hand? 6 or higher? 7 or higher? 8, 9, 10. Okay, how about number 3? Now, 5 or higher. Okay, still pretty good. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, this is very interesting. So good mix. My students tend to answer high, number 2, very, very low, number 3. So the dictionary says creativity is use of imagination to create something original. I don't really like this definition. So Todd Henry, in his book, The Accidental Creative, he defines it as if you are responsible for solving problems, developing strategies, otherwise straining, working your brain for ideas, you're creative. So I think this definition is everyone here. For life, for a job, we need to be creative to handle the problems, the challenges that we face every day. However, many of us have this image of creativity as something we're born with, kind of natural talent. So we tend to imagine people like artists or musicians or architects. Creators are creative, not regular people. However, all humans are creative. Many of us talked about children when we're young. We are very creative, drawing, making things, but schooling, society tends to crush this out of a lot of us. So it's important to keep in mind creativity is like any skill. It can be developed, it can be improved. So today's workshop, the purpose is just introduce 4 of these obstacles, these barriers to creativity, share some research-backed strategies on how to be more creative, and just like now, have a chance to connect it with our own experiences. So this data comes from the last 10 years. I've collected stuff about creativity, and I tried to choose hopefully the most interesting, unique ideas that we haven't heard of as much. So just take the strategies you find useful for yourself, for your students, for your children. The first obstacle I talked about a little bit yesterday in my presentation, but I think it's important to just go over quickly, is having a fixed mindset. So yesterday I talked about mindsets. It's how people think about themselves. And Harold Dweck had these two mindsets. There's fixed at one extreme, where you're born with a certain amount of something. You can't really improve it. And then the other spectrum, other end, is growth. You can always improve. You can always get better at something. So these two mindsets have big effects on life. So in any situation, we can have different mindsets. We could have a fixed mindset for studying a language, but we can have a growth mindset for music. It depends on every context. So just to give an example of this, one area I have a growth mindset is public speaking and presenting. I actually used to be super shy. I was afraid to talk in front of people. In high school, university, I avoided classes that I knew had presentation, or my second major was business. Business, you can get into group presentations. So I volunteered to make the PowerPoint, do the research, let someone else do the presentation, the scary part. Then I was in finance for a few years, and then I quit and became a teacher, and suddenly in front of people talking, having to face my fear. So I spent hours on lesson plans. I asked teachers for advice, read books, watched videos, but what actually helped was actual practice, doing conferences like this, Japan and around the world. And I'll never forget the first international conference I did was with other professors in Japan. We went to Kyrgyzstan for 10 days, 5 universities, and I had to make 2 one-hour workshops. And my boss at the time was like, don't worry, it'll be a very small room, no one will come. And then the very first one, it's this. It's like 100 people with their students. There's a video camera filming me. I was shaking, my voice was cracking. It was terrifying, but everyone was so kind and so friendly, and they gave me good feedback. So the second university, I was still scared, but a little better. The third, the fourth, by the last university, no more fear of presenting. So I was able to grow through practice and feedback. However, I have many more fixed mindset. So just 2, drawing and art. I used to love to draw as a child. I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it. And then I remember I had a teacher in 6th and 7th grade who was very critical of me, who said I had no talent, and I got a bad grade, and I never drew after that class. Same with singing. Elementary school, I tried out for choir. I got embarrassed in front of the whole class, and I never sang again. So these led to a fixed mindset where I thought I had no talent. And it had big effects on my life, because when I moved to Japan, suddenly everyone wants to go to karaoke and sing all night. And that terrified me. So always I'd say, no, sorry, I can't sing. And in hindsight, if I had just tried, I'd be better at singing. So this all comes back to creativity. Is most of us have a story like this, like negative story, especially regarding creativity as well. Just one experience can cause us not to think we're good enough, can damage our creative abilities. So this causes us either consciously, like me, avoiding karaoke, or unconsciously to not take risks to avoid challenges. So the strategy is to try to foster a growth mindset. So step 1 before we can be creative is we have to believe it's possible. That through effort, through strategies, us, our students, our children, it's possible. So research shows just learning about these mindsets, just teaching it to children is already a big step to help them overcome this. So I feel like as soon as possible, the younger the better. It's important for students to know this so that society, standardized schooling, like I talked about yesterday, doesn't crush it out. In Japan, up until elementary school, it's kind of free and fun. And then starting in 6th grade, it becomes like studying for the entrance university exam. they go to school after school to study for this test for the next 6 years, it really limits creativity. So I'd like to have another little chat, maybe 8 minutes, about mindsets. So what's an area of your life, or think about your students or your children, if you have any children, that you feel they have a growth mindset, where first you weren't so good, but you put in effort and you got better. And how about a fixed mindset? So for me, like drawing, where you think you can't do it, you have no talent. And is there anything you could think of to do in your classes, at home, for yourself, to kind of move a little bit closer to a growth mindset? So this time I'd like to switch up the groups. What I do in my classes, maybe the easiest, is I'll just give everyone a number, and then the numbers we can get into groups and have different people. So this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So number ones, maybe this wall over here, 2 by the bananas, 3 by the tea, 4 maybe this wall over here. So again, quickly say hello, introduce your names if you don't know each other, and about 8 minutes. Just discuss growth, fixed mindsets, yourself or your students, and ways to improve.
Hello.
You're on.
Sweet.
Your students.
Many of us.
You already
So, some skills
And in my family,
very strong.
we are more.
So I tried, when I've listened to myself, like,
It's not like sort of skill.
I used to go to church when I was a child, and I was,
You do music.
I I'm
Genetic,
I
like,
know that
they-
I couldn't do
some
it.
things that, easier, but it's
My life is
more like
quite
environment.
I'm happy to be part of it, believing that
And we start one when he was 6, I had to start so
chose to join the Polish Society. But it really turned out that I was actually grown up. Because I had a build up. I had a job for staying forever.
Every time, and no one
And I know I
dealing with mathematics.
get better at it in the sense of
Horrible.
Yeah, but even I guess that in French students, it's just like kids are 3-year-old girls and boys they have the same mathematics. They got people increasing and increasing on this already to speak like us. The girls, you know, it's really good. So I also started to ask girls how are their kind of perceptions about where that goes wrong. And around the age of 5, girls have been more and I don't know who felt that was today.
In society, like when strong, all around them, like engineers,
like the
posting and
response on the students that I never.
Maybe it was you know, I love writing course and I was this year. So now I'm okay with it.
You can do a lot.
I enjoy it.
Quite often it's just like starting from the beginning, everyone wants to know that. I know some of you are already, but don't, so we and give a chance to everybody.
And
Of course, I need a lot of like encouragement. Yeah, so they start from the really places. So then, thought that I have and I think some like that students have the mindset that they're not good at anything, and they start to, rebel against the whole because you don't want to be that way. And then street
if you look history, it's better than can also be aware that many teachers did, but my teacher was another thing. They told the children this is what you also students.
One more minute.
I mean, if you have attitude,
You can show them what you're not going to say.
Even today, I was and I have very university speaker, and I
And did I say what you say? I understand. Go back to your language.
How can you generalize 30 boys and learn the projection of your thoughts, but they think it, and I'm sure they show it
There's a reason I think it was better than he made me. I mean, well, I was
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Please say thank you to your groups, and you can go back to your seats.
And also you gestures and other ways.
Okay, time please. Please say thank you to your groups. And you can go back to your seats.
Yes, it's good. Successful.
All right, everyone, so some very interesting discussions. And one thing I forgot to say is that it's okay to have fixed mindset in some areas. It's impossible to have growth everywhere. Like some of us, for me, maybe singing is just not a skill I need now. It would have been nice 20 years ago. So it's okay, but when it comes to creativity in this context, we want our children, our students to have a growth mindset. So the second obstacle I'll talk about next is expertise and also lack of diversity of ideas. So these, slides out of order. So social media these days, I think, has made this a lot more difficult. Lack of diversity of ideas in our life. Because the algorithms on SNS, what we like is what we keep seeing. So this leads to something called echo chamber. That's the slide I was looking for. I don't know where it went. But basically, the topics that we like is all we hear. We don't get to hear other opinions in social media, on the news that we watch, the newspapers that we read. So this limits us and our thinking. So this is happening very obviously in America in politics these days, the left and the right. So also narrow expertise can also hinder creativity. So Adam Grant, in his best-selling book Originals, had a quote, the more expertise and experience gained, the more entrenched, the more stuck we become in a particular way of viewing the world. Or Abraham Maslow had a quote, if your only tool is a hammer, it's tempting to see everything as a nail. So we get stuck in one way of thinking about the world, and that can hinder our creativity. So for example, researchers doing doctorates, I think many of us can relate. For the rest of our life, that maybe is the lens, the focus of our research. So for me, learner mindsets, growth and fixed is the first thing that always comes to mind. But it's important to kind of break out of that and have more ideas. So too much expertise is not good. Modern society helps and hurts with this. It hurts because we're having less face-to-face interactions, especially since the pandemic and COVID. People are more polarized, more left and right. But it also helps internet, social media. It's much easier to find people that are interested, to find diverse groups. There's websites called meetups where you can meet people with similar interests, online forums for students, clubs, events, groups, conferences like this. Also, wide range idea exposure is important. So we need to expose ourselves to as many different kinds of people and ideas as we can, kind of broaden our interests in different fields. So Adam Grant, in his book, he analyzed winners of Nobel Peace Prize, and very interesting finding is people who had a background in liberal arts or had some kind of art-related hobby were much more likely to win the Nobel Prize. So if people who like to draw were 7 times higher to have won the Nobel Prize, writing plays and short stories 12 times more likely, and performing and dancing 22 times more likely people who've won. So it just shows having these creative hobbies can also help us in our job in our life. In his book, Range, David Epstein said, reading only one or a few fields kind of narrows our perspective. So he recommends becoming more of a generalist. So not going deep into one area, but kind of spreading out across fields to build diversity. So for example, for me, I love to read books. When I became teacher, I started just education, reading all about education, different areas of education. Then I moved into psychology and education psychology, positive psychology, then into sociology, philosophy, neuroscience, now Paul. So all of these different fields can help us generate new ideas. There's a saying I read once that new ideas usually come from the border of different fields. So an engineer thinks very differently about certain problems than an architect does, than a doctor does. So to disagree, we have to first understand other points of view, and we should try to understand points of view before we are understood. The next strategy is connected to this, just wide range people exposure. There's a famous quote that we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with in our life. So it's important for us to think, who are these 5 people? For a long time when I lived in Japan, it was mainly white dudes were my friends, even though I was in Japan. So it's important to have more diverse friends, different ages, different backgrounds, different beliefs, different jobs. This leads to new ideas, which leads to more creativity. And again, this is a lot easier these days with social media and the internet. Lastly, wide range content exposure. So we also need various healthy stimuli. There's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. If we're only watching, reading kind of shallow content, then we're not gonna have good ideas in our job. Our kids are not gonna have good ideas. So it's important to think and have our students think, what kind of books, media do we consume daily? Are they conducive? Are they helpful for our creativity, for our goals at work? It's too easy to doom scroll, just use social media or just binge watch TV shows on Netflix. I love Netflix, I watch a lot of TV, but there's a limit to how much and what we watch. I recently did a unit on smartphone use at my university. I work at a women's university now, and my students told me on average they use their smartphones 6 to 8 hours a day. And most of that is just social media and Instagram and TikTok. Like, that's the definition of garbage in, unless it's educational content, which a lot of them it wasn't. So Todd Henry again says, if we want to regularly have brilliant ideas, we have to be purposeful about what's going into our heads, what we're watching, what we're reading. So I've talked enough, so we'll have another short little mini break about idea, diversity, expertise. So for each of you, what kind of field areas do you usually tend to read for research or for work? So for example, these days, like whole research, education psychology, positive psychology research, I read. How about what do you read or watch for learning or entertainment? What kind of books? Are there any YouTube channels or Netflix shows that you like for entertainment or for learning? And then 2 is maybe more important. Is there any content, any garbage that you feel maybe you should reduce or start to cut out of your life? Plus, what are some new areas that maybe you or your students might want to start to do a little bit more that might be useful to help creativity? So let's get back to the groups the first time. Whoever you're sitting close with, maybe 2 or 3 people, and just about 8 minutes, have a chat about this idea, diversity, expertise. What do you usually read, watch for fun, for work? Is there any areas you should reduce? Any other areas maybe would benefit you to learn about in your career or your children, your students' worlds? Okay, so again, if it's okay, I'll ask everyone please stand up. Again, short stretch, get the blood flowing again back to our brain. And again, about maybe 8 or 9 minutes, we'll have a chat. If you want to sit, you can sit too. That's okay.
For research,
and put everything else aside.
I do a part. So
so it's about conservative. They have views about
I could just
It's more like we all like it. It's all everything.
Yes, I'm actually making. Yes.
You know, more constructive.
Window shopping, like what could I make? Drilling
It's like going to a restaurant. You look at the menu. The menu is like huge, like all over.
Which actually can be
Actually, we have this, you put all this time and she can randomly one thing.
Research. Right.
So she goes
I think it's just
articles to get the best
yeah, so that's through collaborating.
one of the teachers right. So we will see
I keep trying to create the more SSPU stuff. I never do it in voice. I always reading I do is grounded.
purposeful.
It's not, but it's not. It's not. Skyscrapers.
In November,
Mushroom organizations or the biggest shit ever made. It's a lot of educational content. That's mostly no. And then the read picks it out. I use it like half, 80% of the time on Instagram is working. It's working. It's like rainbows.
Actually, we don't know what the teacher
It's brain rot. Like I just scroll right through the brain. But then it's not like, oh, delete the app. But then there's 20% just like actually authentically maintaining and building. I don't know if it's worth it. The brain rot may be worth it. And then the last one. It's always learn how to get control of that. But you'll find that we have a child that your life will become much more organized and much better using the child. I used to think I didn't have time well today, but also like,
and then I have an
so it's actually nice.
Goals when you like something or you search something, it comes to your feed and it gives out of the
What else is
and then we decided to I have something of interesting. I have to very chill.
journal papers.
My brain.
Like you like coming to the bench, you would talk, like you would not,
In the evening when I'm tired, you know, the next day I used to use your brain. Other amusement that I can express, pray, but don't. And also, and maybe and they call it for me. If I have 20 different areas in my brain, because I would like to be with 20, you can't be deep in all of them.
What do you look at?
Kind of pressure. Yes, so I just
Horrifying.
It's a horror movie, and it's.
Nothing else is harder on myself.
I don't care. For myself, I don't want to go. And looking at your like resonance
Some days it should be
American
thinking
right
about
American now happening in Europe. You know, thinking economically like so that is something like and I suppose I've been somewhere and like I imagine at some point
One more.
like going walking with my friends. People run through the book like they're climbing the mountain. Joy of the walk is
Degrading treatment. Research in the field of being over time.
That's useful for me. I just talking about like people being congratulations. To me, I mean, that's not very useful. I just learn a lot about
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Please say thank you to your hosts and you can take your seats.
It's never like, I'm great.
Sorry to keep interrupting. I know we keep getting into good conversations and having to stop.
But I do find that
It's sensitive. It's very sensitive.
Thank you, everyone. So the third obstacle that I'll talk about is trying to remember everything. And then spoiler is the fourth one has to do with Gen AI. So that'll tie into the theme of this conference. So David Allen is very famous. His book, Getting Things Done, has a quote I like. Our brains are meant to have ideas, not hold them. So many of us, many of my students, we know or we feel we could remember everything in our life, that we don't need to use schedule or to-do lists, that we have everything up here, we can remember everything. So a lot of my students don't use schedules, even though they have like 14 classes and part-time job and things like that, because they say, teacher, I can just remember. So yeah, of course, we can remember all of this, but it actually takes up a large part of our brain capacity. So all of this remembering stuff doesn't allow us to make space, to think, to be creative, to have ideas in everyday life. So the strategy 3.1, the first one, is if we're not already doing this, we should be using to-do lists and schedules in our life in order to put all of this not so important stuff on paper or in our phone, so we don't have to think about it until we need to. Only once our brains are free of all this stuff can we ideate. So with my students, first years, we have some lessons on time management and schedule keeping. And one of the assignments I have them do for homework is a things to remember list. It's a piece of paper each day. The left, they just write their schedule. So class, lunch, study, class, dinner, meet friends, whatever they are doing, as detailed as they can. The key thing is the right side. The right side is the things to remember column. As they're going through their day, if suddenly there's something that they need to do in the future. So like after Jason's class, Jason's homework class next week on Wednesday, they just write on the right, Jason's homework class. Or if you're having breakfast and, oh no, I need to buy milk and eggs when I come home, they just write buy milk and eggs. So it's a piece of paper, you can just put in your pocket, take it out, write it, put it back. Or you can use a memo. A lot of my students tend to not like paper. They prefer using smartphone, which is fine. So at the end of the day, you look at all these things to remember, and then you put it into your calendar. So I use like an online calendar, like Google Calendar. My wife, she's a nurse. She uses a paper calendar. So she writes all her shifts, when she has on-call, when she has night shifts. So this is a very simple one, like for students, when you're class, when you have tests or homework, when to study, and like 5 minutes at night it takes before you go to sleep. Just take this paper, look at everything you need to do, and schedule it into your calendar. Then you don't have to think about it again until the alarm goes off. There's a YouTuber that I followed for years, 12 interviews later. His schedule is a bit more crazy because he's an entrepreneur, he has his own business. So you can be as detailed as you need to be for your job, your situation. But the first tip is having some kind of calendar, schedule, to-do list. Part 2 of this is having a creativity capture method. We need a way to capture moments when we're creative. There's something that I came across called the 3 B's of creativity. These are 3 situations when we tend to be the most creative. The first is bus. So when we're commuting, it could be bus or car or train. We tend to not be focusing on anything. So often we have some creative ideas. Bath or shower is another one. For me, in the shower is when I tend to have like good ideas for some reason. And then bed also, before we fall asleep. Sometimes we're thinking about our day or the next day, and we'll have ideas. And then the bonus one is going for walks. I think when we're walking. During my doctorate, there were so many times where I was stuck and frustrated, and I just walked to my campus and be around nature and trees, and then I'd have an idea, and I'd stop, and I'd write it down. So that's the key thing. We need a way to quickly capture these creative ideas in these situations. Bus, maybe it's not so hard, but bath and bed, it can be tricky. I've had many good ideas before falling asleep, and I thought, okay, I'll remember this tomorrow. And then I wake up and it's gone. It's like, damn, I should have written it down. So we can just use like a note app on our smartphone. I use just like a voice memo app when I was doing my doctorate walks. I'd have an idea, I'd stop wherever I was and just quickly say that idea into the phone, and then I'd listen to it later. I have friends who carry like a physical notebook in their back pocket and they take out and write ideas. So we need some way to capture. Then this information we need a system for. So I'm going to explain my system that I learned the last few years. It's a little bit confusing, but at the end there's a slide of a book and a YouTube video that is very helpful to explain step by step. So if you're interested, I recommend. So I have, over the last few years, created a second brain system using Notion, which is like an online free website. So coming up with creative ideas can be very difficult. We may have an idea, then long period of time, we have no ideas, then we have ideas. This helps a bit more. So whenever I read anything, there's these areas that I think about. So if I read a book, what ideas can help me as a person improve? What ideas can help in my classes for my students? Do I want to use for a lesson? What ideas do I want to use for maybe a possible research study in the future? What ideas to make hopefully interesting workshops like this one that'll help educators? And also recently, my university, we're trying to do more PR because the population in Japan is going down and less students are coming to university. So it's becoming a financial issue. So now business and marketing, I need to learn a little bit to help. So 5 different areas. It can be hard to keep track of, but this method helps. So I read a lot of books. Physical books I highlight, but in Japan, it's hard to buy English books. So I love my Kindle. I read lots of ebooks and I highlight, then I copy into a Word document and I print the Word document. And I've reduced, but I have like hundreds of these folders. Each is a book with highlights that I have. And I talked to my brother once and he's like, how much of this do you actually remember? And I was like, oh, that's a good point. I can't easily find information about creativity or about mindsets in all of this. So I came across a book about prolific German sociologist, Niklas Luhmann, who came up with this Zettelkasten slipbox system. He was super prolific. He wrote over 70 books, 400 academic papers using this system, and it's possible to do this online. So this will be a little complicated. This is Notion. You could do Notion for many stuff, but there's 2 things I use it for. The first is permanent notes. This is just random notes. Whenever I read something, you're supposed to summarize the main idea in like a sentence and then just write it as a note. And you can click these notes and inside I have details, the source and information, which I'll show later. So these are before I process them. They're just random information from books, from articles, from videos. Then over the years, I've created this slipbox, different categories. So I have some on well-being, on productivity, on happiness, education, self-improvement. Fortunately, I had one on creativity, health, psychology, etc. Then what I do is these permanent notes, I go through them and I choose which category do they belong to. And I use Luhmann's system. He used note cards, but basically you just organize it. And whenever you have a new idea, you see if it connects to any other ideas you've written. And you can just click on an idea and inside is the notes that I took. So for example, I have the source, like the YouTube video, the link. There's something called novelty index, which I came across, which is when I first learned this, how interesting, how unique did I think it was? On a score of 0 to 5, if it's a 4 or higher, I think maybe it'll be interesting or useful for other people. Because over time, stuff we learn, we tend to think everyone knows it. We forget how unique it was when we learned it. So anyway, this is too much to go into, but the QR code at the end of this presentation, this is the book, but I would start with this YouTube video by Ali Abdul, who's one of my favorite YouTubers. This explains how to set it up, how you can use it for your situation. But thanks to this system, whenever I need to make a presentation, I just click on the area and I have all the information. So the outline for this workshop took like 30 minutes. The PowerPoint took like 6 times as long to make, but I already have all the ideas that I've been reading the last 10 years. So it's a very helpful system to capture ideas. So I think this one I will skip. I'll put this discussion with the last one and we'll do those maybe together. Let's see. This goes until what time? I forgot, 5? 5? Okay, maybe we have time to do this one then. Let's get into the number of groups again. 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be the last time I ask you to stand up. And if you want to sit down, just pull chairs, that's fine. So I'd like you to just share your personal experiences with schedules, to-do lists. Do you use them? If yes, how? Do you use paper? Like my wife, she has a calendar. Do you use apps? Which apps? If no, why not? Do you think it might help you? And what situations, like the 3 Bs, bus or bath or bed, do you feel you're most creative? Do you have a way to capture this creativity? So again, maybe 8 minutes. So number 1 can be over here. 2 was the bananas. 3 was the tea. 4 was the wall. So again, short stretch. I know it's getting late in the afternoon. This will be the last chat probably we have today. So about another 9 minutes to discuss these capture methods. And if you want, you can shuffle groups too. If you just want to move to a different group, that's completely okay.
So we are very close to cooking. My best idea I have is for
just after waking up, but then it's also always
Every year I buy
I know.
First thing I do is sometimes I've already done something after doing that, I write them down in my but they just refuse to achieve it. It's very important. If I know that I teacher, I work
That's true, but
I go to I also have my days were already given away. Office, I come to work and discover here's your day, you know, it's a very strange feeling. So when I was doing my PhD, I had something
actually, I agree with you.
and I had one was a card and another set of cards that's
Just
two, like, and these then pointed at the ones for German. So I wanted to and I also this ideas would point to the item at the planning where there was more detail. So it's very similar, but it was done without computer. But this is essential.
I've never
Yeah, and one day for you see these but this is just it's only for tasks, not for members. Just a task, right? So I write them in the morning, and then as I do the things I do.
I do too. I'm like,
Yeah, motivation.
It's good. It's really makes sense, you know, for example, you should go ahead of the way or something you reduce. So it's not the only
I want to turn on the light. Is it worth it?
I think schedule things into the future and also birthdays.
Based on what I'm reading from.
Or something like that.
But the downside To remember when I went to this conference.
Transformation was like
And
social media posting that's gonna
of course, I got everything that I did is
market some to the top. And then I might have some notebook and then I was with anymore.
It's just not doing it.
Yeah, some of them, like
I'm sorry.
most of them, you have your tips and whatnot, and then we call this like smartphone era, there's like tons of great ideas. Yeah, I still have it, but I never have
You
used
visit.
it.
Yeah, it's important not to use everything.
Yeah.
One more minute, or 30, let's do 30 seconds, we'll finish up this conversation. If you finish, you can say thank you and take your seats.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. So the final obstacle that I'll talk about is Gen AI over-reliance, which has been a theme today and yesterday. Benedict and Richard, you've touched on these topics quite a lot. So Gen AI is something called a double-edged sword, which in English means you can cut the enemy, but you can also cut yourself. If you don't use it well, it has harm. So just like any tool, if used well, it's good. But the issue that we talked about yesterday and today is many of our students are not using it well. So how to address this? So in Japan, JOLT is the major teachers association, and I'm a CALL member, so Computer Assisted Language Learning. So with colleagues, earlier this year, we published a paper of ChatGPT use with university students, and we have another paper will be published very soon. And the key themes, the negative themes related to ChatGPT for, this was L2 English learning, was hindered learning, is what the students said, decreased independent thinking, and over-reliance were the predominant negative themes. So for students, but likely for teachers, I'm starting to find myself using it more and more because it does save time, but the balance is important of how we use it. So over-reliance, this is a huge problem, especially because it hinders creativity. Students aren't thinking about the steps of writing an essay. They're just telling Gen AI to write the essay for them or to solve the problems or everything that Richard, you showed all the news clippings earlier about that. So these were some of the quotes the students said: weakening ability to think for oneself, relying too much makes one stop thinking for oneself. So it's an amazing tool when used properly. So James Clear, he has a quote I like. Shortcuts like Gen AI tend to accelerate effort. They make it improve, not replace it. So he says like supplements and recovery methods might speed up our progress in the gym, but it can't replace the need for the workout. I think one of the presentations also mentioned this. It's like going to the gym and having the Gen AI do the exercise for you. He said, in general, people who benefit most from shortcuts, like using Gen AI, are those who continue to practice the fundamentals consistently. So we still need to know how to write, how to do whatever it is. But Gen AI can be a plus. It can help us do it better, do it faster, save time so we can be more creative. So I'll talk about 3 ways we can use Gen AI in a creative way. The first is brainstorming, which we talked about. So first, I think it's important for us and students to brainstorm ourselves first. So say like 15 minutes, what ideas do I want to write about this homework or this paper? So no AI yet, just yourself or the students first. Then take those ideas into a Gen AI and ask it to improve it or suggest additional ones. What's good about AI is we can ask it to do things that we can't ask like a human to do. Like give me 10, 15, 20, 30 other ideas, and it can do it in a second. Then look over all of those ideas, choose some that you like, add your own idea to it, do it again and again. So in this way, it's us plus AI, or students plus AI. Kind of, it's like a support, a teacher helping us. So this lets us come up with maybe more unique ideas than we can do ourselves. So this can be used for research ideas, sample paper outlines, initial lesson plans, titles for papers and presentations, advice, suggestions. There's lots of ways we can use it for brainstorming. But the key is the human starts first, then the AI, then the human plus the AI until the final output. The second one I came across recently, and I think this is so cool, is perspective shifting via simulated dialogue and debate. So these days, you can tell Gen AI to be a certain role and to respond a certain way. So you can say, explain this, whatever this is to me, using a scientist's perspective or an artist's perspective, an engineer's perspective, just to get a different way of thinking. Or we can role play with it, as the Gen AI is a certain historical figure or expert. So we can use specific people in our field to tell ChatGPT, debate my thesis as if you were Albert Einstein, for example, or some famous person in our field to get feedback. You can also ask it to play devil's advocate. This in English means someone who always focuses on the critical points, the negative points. This is meant to help us find gaps or errors in our work. So we can have an idea, and then ChatGPT can say, this is terrible because of ABC. Then we can think about it and maybe use it to improve. So it was also a good movie with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. So this just helps us develop more flexible thinking, telling it to be someone and to talk to it that way. The last way, I haven't tried this yet, but I think it's a cool idea, is the deep dive podcast prompt. And I got this from Ali Abdul, the YouTuber I showed earlier. So pretend the Gen AI is going to do like a podcast. You'll have 2 guests with different perspectives. So for example, if it's politics, one guest in America could be the Democrat, the blue party. The other can be Republican, the red party. Both of them are going to discuss whatever topic. So I want you to, this is the prompt you could use. I want you to pretend we're in a long form podcast. I'm the host, I'm asking questions. We have 2 guests, in this case, X and Y. These will be people with different views. I'm going to ask questions as the host. I want you to respond as the 2 guests, elaborate your response, help me understand how to answer the question. So you're getting different perspectives about the same question. It's a good way for brainstorming. Then you keep asking your questions about your topic, your theory, whatever it is. So in this video, he explains how he used AI as a life coach for a year. And there's lots of very unique, interesting applications of Gen AI. what kind of data we can put into it and what it can do, and what shouldn't we use it for. So we're not going to do this in groups, but I'd like you just to think about it, and maybe at the end, I think there's a little time. If anyone has any comments or questions, we can all discuss. So do you currently use Gen AI? If yes, how? For creativity, if no, how might you be able to use it? Do your students, children use it as well? So just to finish up, so these are the 4 obstacles. Again, holding a fixed mindset about creativity, thinking we're not creative. We should try to have a growth mindset. Lack of diversity and too deep expertise in one area isn't good. You should diversify. Different ideas, different people in our life, different content that we take in. Trying to remember everything. Instead, use schedules, have ways to capture the information, maybe the second brain like I showed, and Gen AI over-reliance, instead using it critically, certain ways for creativity. So getting better at the prompts, at telling it what it should do, instead of just letting it give us the answer right away is important. References, and this is the QR code. If you want all these slides, I know there's a lot of information. You can take a look at it later. So thank you very much for joining today. I know this was a bit long, but I hope something was useful from it. And yeah, if anyone has any comments or questions, please let me know. And feel free to, if you ever want to send an email and discuss any of these topics, I'm always interested in more academic discussions. So any comments or questions? Okay, I think it's break now. So if anyone does have, you could just find me during break.